Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Urban Land Institute of Northwest Arkansas's Attainable Housing Series. This is part 3, a case study of Willow Bend by Partners for Better Housing. I'm your host, Wes Creglow, and I am the Northwest Arkansas Coordinator for the Urban Land Institute. Let's begin with a few housekeeping notes. First, we are recording this presentation, and we will make it available for viewing in the coming days through our website and social media channels. Next, we beg your grace in the unfortunate event of a mishap. If, for example, myself or another speaker drop off, we'll get restarted within a few moments. Finally, we encourage audience members to keep your video feeds off and your screens in speaker mode. This will guarantee that you get to see the speaker primarily and preserve the most of your screen's real estate for the presentation itself. Thank you. Before I introduce our guest speakers for today, please allow me to introduce you to a little bit more about the Urban Land Institute. ULI is the oldest and largest network of cross-disciplinary real estate and land use experts in the world. ULI is its members. Through our members' dedication to the mission and their shared expertise, the Institute has been able to set standards of excellence in development practice. Established in 1936, the Institute today represents the entire spectrum of the land use and development disciplines. The Institute has long been recognized as one of the most respected sources of objective information on urban planning, growth, and development, thanks in large part to its members' experience. ULI relies heavily on the experience of its members. It is through involvement and information resources that ULI has been able to set standards of excellence in development practice. District councils deliver the ULI mission at the local level. We engage local members through developing various ULI priority programs, hosting educational forums, and convening special events. And one of those special events is the reason we're all here today. Housing affordability is becoming an increasing concern, both nationally and right here in Northwest Arkansas, as demand has bounced back following the Great Recession. A largely untold chapter in the story of America's housing affordability challenge is the shrinking share of modestly priced, newly constructed for-sale homes, what ULI calls attainable housing. As we discussed over the previous 2 weeks in this series, supply has not always been commensurate to that demand in quantity or typology. However, evidence indicates that industry leaders are starting to respond with new housing products and new development models. Innovations are coming from publicly held home builders, developers of master planned communities, neighborhood-based real estate investors, and a new breed of entrepreneurs from other industries. One such innovator is Partners for Better Housing. Partners for Better Housing is a 501c3 nonprofit housing developer piloting innovative approaches to mixed income housing, small-scale infill, public-private partnerships, and low-impact development. They're dedicated to building homes people can love and afford in neighborhoods that strengthen the bonds of community. The Partners for Better Housing Board consists of community leaders with expertise in real estate development, architecture, finance, energy efficiency, construction trades, property management, communication, stormwater management, and urban design. We have with us today Board President Keaton Smith and the organization's Executive Director, Tiffany Hudson. Keaton Smith is a commercial banker with Iberia Bank, member of the Fayetteville School Board, and board chair of Partners for Better Housing, a nonprofit housing development that I mentioned before that's represented here today. Keaton loves his wife, Megan, his daughter, Cora, the Razorbacks, go Hogs, bluegrass music, and diving into the weeds of policy and program details. As a native of Atlanta, Georgia, Tiffany Hudson relocated to Northwest Arkansas in late 2019. Tiffany was a private land developer and residential single-family builder for many years, more recently working for the Atlanta Housing Authority on several large-scale, innovative, mixed-income communities. Following their presentation, we will begin a brief question and answer period. At any time during this hour, you're welcome to send your questions to me using the chat function found at the bottom of your screen. I will do my best to relay as many of them as possible to Keaton and Tiffany prior to the end of this event. Your questions will be shared anonymously, so don't be bashful. Jump in, they make this better. And without further delay, ladies and gentlemen, Keaton Smith. Ladies and gentlemen, bear with us real quick. I will get this taken care of.
Can you hear me now?
There you are. Welcome back, Keaton.
Okay.
we didn't catch anything from you. If you don't mind, just from the top, please. Thank you.
All right. Well, now that you've had a chance to read the slide, thank you, Wes. We're super excited to be here today, and we're just grateful to be a part of the Northwest Arkansas housing ecosystem. There is a lot of innovative things happening in Northwest Arkansas right now around housing. And so I just wanted to acknowledge and highlight a few of the other recent exciting developments. Just last week, Congress for the New Urbanism highlighted pattern zones, which is an innovative idea coming out of Northwest Arkansas that's being piloted in Bryan, Texas with the help of Matthew Petty, Matt Hoffman, and Daniel Hintz. We've got the Community Development Corporation of Bentonville and Bella Vista that is working on ADUs and how to scale those throughout the region. We've got partnerships happening between LIHTC developers and foundations and developers. And we've also got a really thoughtful development community, for-profit development community that's doing a lot of innovative things. So we're really proud to be a part of that ecosystem and excited to be with you all today. You know, the last 2 weeks, for folks that either have or haven't joined the first two segments of this series, we've heard about national models, national trends, home builder surveys, developer surveys, home buyer preferences. And what's clear is that when it comes to housing, there's no national model. There's no place that's gotten it right. And so I think that's what's really exciting about being in Northwest Arkansas right now is that we have the opportunity to get this right. We have the opportunity to start early and early in kind of the overall phase of our region's growth cycle. And we have an opportunity to get ahead of looming housing challenges that we know are interconnected with transportation and land use and policy and so many other issues. So it's a really exciting time to be in this space and appreciate the opportunity to speak with you all. What we're going to chat about today is a little bit of history and context about our nonprofit, where we're a 501c3, Partners for Better Housing. Our first major project is the Willow Bend neighborhood, so we'll share that with you. We'll talk about the Pay It Forward program, which is our shared equity homeownership program. And hopefully we'll get a chance to talk about opportunities for replicability and scalability. These are our current board members, and we just deeply appreciate all of their service. We were founded in 2007 by the Fayetteville Housing Authority and later became an independent 501c3. And through the course of our history, through the course of the development of the Willow Bend neighborhood, it's really just been a community-wide team effort. So we have a significant partnership, long-standing partnership in place with the city of Fayetteville. Hershey and Denise Garner have been mission-driven investors in the Willow Bend neighborhood. The Fayetteville Housing Authority contributed dollars to help us purchase the land. And we've also received financial support from the Endeavor Foundation, the Home Depot Foundation, and Iberia Bank, my employer. We've worked with local lenders, including First Security Bank. And then a couple weeks ago, we closed on our home construction loan with Generations Bank, as well as a local CDFI. And we've used a variety of local vendors and contractors, engineers, and consultants, grant administrators, as well as national best practices. We worked with Kelly Weiss of Community Wheelhouse in Austin to help us design the Pay It Forward shared equity homeownership program. And we could not be here without the longstanding support of so many volunteers. Many of you know Robert Sharp. He is the volunteer town architect for the Willow Bend neighborhood. Hugh Ernest is a former volunteer executive director. And then the current board of directors has put in well over 2,000 volunteer hours over the past 3 years to move this project forward. So it's really been a big team effort. We'd like to start by talking about the housing spectrum, really because, one, it gives a visual image for how housing problems are complex, and there are a number of different solutions that need to be brought to bear to solve for different challenges within the housing spectrum. This is a chart, a graphic put together by the Fayetteville Housing Authority, and it gives you a sense of the various organizations, at least in Fayetteville, that are active in this space. So on the left, we start with services, shelter, and support for individuals experiencing homelessness. We move to the right with public housing and subsidized rental housing, which is typically done through low-income housing tax credits. We have market rate rental, and then we have home ownership, both subsidized and market rate home ownership. And that's the area where Partners for Better Housing has historically been focused, and that's the focus of the Willow Bend neighborhood. And so, this is an image that was created during the master plan for the Willow Bend neighborhood, and we're about to start talking about Willow Bend, but at a high level, we see the promise of a nonprofit developer is really to be a learning lab. We understand that developers are kind of laying it all on the line with every project that they do. And so as a nonprofit developer, we can listen to national trends like we've heard about the past couple of weeks, where maybe it's a little bit more density or smaller houses to match the projected demographics we see going forward. And we can take a little bit more risk in those areas. And so we hope that by taking a little bit more risk and learning and seeing what works, that the for-profit sector can adapt some of the things that work, and that all of us can learn from both the things that work and the things that don't. So a little bit of the timeline. It has been a lengthy process, which is understandable given the volunteer nature of the organization. But from 2009 to 2012, we identified the site, acquired the site, and went through a master planning process that included extensive community engagement. That master plan was funded by a grant from the Home Depot Foundation that we applied for and secured in partnership with the city of Fayetteville. In 2013, we established our formal financial partnership with the city of Fayetteville, which we'll talk through in more detail. And then over the next few years, we worked on business planning, pre-development, and some policy change that aligned with the goals of the neighborhood. We've been under construction on the infrastructure over the past few years, and we're ready to begin home building. We've also been developing this Pay It Forward program, which we'll dive into in just a little bit. So a little bit about this site. It's a 9-acre infill site, really in the heart of the Walker Park neighborhood, just south of downtown Fayetteville, just to the east of Walker Park, a very large community park. It's not in a flood zone, but it is a very wet site. And so from the beginning, we identified with our partners at the city that this would be a good opportunity to test or pilot low impact development stormwater infrastructure techniques. So those include infiltration trenches, which is an underground alternative to above ground detention ponds. We have several of those on the property. And those allow for more density, which creates more opportunities for affordability and maybe a little bit more compact use of the land. The project has 5 rain gardens on the site, and it also has a wetland area, sort of a natural stormwater management area that you can see on the site plan in the northwest corner, and that kind of catches the storm water as it comes off Mount Sequoia and the Fayetteville Square. Through the master planning process, we heard from a lot of longtime neighbors in the Walker Park neighborhood. That's been a historically a neighborhood that's suffered from some historic disinvestment. It was sort of cut off from downtown by a highway that was built during the urban renewal period. And so we heard pretty clearly from the neighborhood that they wanted affordable home ownership opportunities, and they really wanted to see owner occupancy. So those were two key takeaways that we took away from the neighborhood during the master planning process. And from the beginning, we've been focused on this idea of traditional neighborhood development. So walkability, shared green spaces, you know, every house has a front porch, very community oriented. We feel like we love it from a design perspective, but particularly for a mixed income neighborhood and really any neighborhood, it's the design of the neighborhood that creates that connectivity, that helps to foster community, build relationships between neighbors, and really build social capital between diverse socioeconomic groups. So our partnership with the city of Fayetteville, this is a true public-private partnership. The city of Fayetteville has contributed $1 million to the project. It's in the form of an infrastructure cost share, but it's important to understand that that $1 million does not subsidize the project or the nonprofit. That $1 million will be directly passed through to income qualified home buyers. So we'll touch on this a couple of times, but we'll dollar for dollar, we'll use that $1 million to reduce the purchase price of the homes for income qualified home buyers, and that's our affordability fund. Those are the funds we have to deliver affordability in the neighborhood. So the city really wanted to see sort of a market-driven approach to sustainable and attainable housing. And we do feel like, because there is not a lot of subsidy in the project, that there are a lot of replicable aspects. The city wanted to explore neighborhood stabilization opportunities in the Walker Park neighborhood. They knew that the cost share would be partially supported by property tax growth in the area, and that the density of 80 homes on 9 acres would support that tax base. And they also saw an opportunity to pilot new development approaches, which, you know, we think is right on line with what a nonprofit developer can do to add value, both in the things that we build, but also for the broader development community. So a key area of that has been in the area of policy change. So we worked with the city to create a new zoning category, RSF 18. So this reduced the minimum lot size for residential development. It also reduced the minimum street frontage for residential development in the city of Fayetteville. It's really kind of an infill zoning classification, and it's now being used fairly broadly on a lot of infill projects. We also worked with the city to tweak their cottage housing ordinance. The Willow Bend neighborhood will include 3 cottage courts. And so that's a good example, I think, of how, you know, the city has goals in its comp plan and its 2040 plan. And by working closely with a nonprofit developer, a city can look at an actual project and use that as a test case to say, okay, what works in this zoning code? What doesn't work? What needs to be tweaked? We worked with the city to use a street cross section that was designed for the Hillside Overlay District, and that allowed us to basically put narrower streets in the neighborhood, which has several benefits. Narrower streets, as we all know, they slow traffic, they make the neighborhood safer for children and families and all people. They also allow for more tree preservation, more units, more affordability, and just more of a pedestrian-friendly feel. We worked with the city to reduce park fees for alley-loaded developments, and we're also just retesting some old ideas like building the utilities under the streets and creating smaller curb returns for more pedestrian-friendly intersections. The home design, as I mentioned, is being led by Robert Sharp. There are 80 homes total and 13 floor plans, 1, 2, and 3 bedroom. It's a very compact neighborhood, so the floor plans are very much fit to the individual sites. The idea here is we're not trying to offer affordable housing by cutting costs. We want to build high quality housing with durable materials because let's face it, housing affordability is more than just the purchase price of your home. It's also about maintenance costs, it's about energy efficiency, and critically, it's about transportation costs. So between the location of the neighborhood that is close to a bus stop and very connected to the trail system and very walkable, and the design and construction quality of the homes, we want to ensure that our homeowners are not hit with any unexpected large maintenance costs, and so we really want to think through how we can quantify and build on this idea of the total cost of home ownership being really the most important metric, and that's inclusive of, as I said, transportation costs, utility and energy costs, and maintenance costs. The target market we think is fairly broad. We look forward to welcoming families to the neighborhood. We think there's going to be some great opportunities for single parents to access home ownership here. We think that seniors and empty nesters will gravitate to the neighborhood, as well as first-time home buyers, young couples, childless families. In 2017, we issued an RFQ and an RFP to select both a development manager for the vertical construction as well as a listing broker for the sales and marketing of the homes. And we selected High Street as that partner. High Street has experience with a couple of traditional neighborhood developments. They're currently building Johnson Square in Johnson, and they also led the Village at Hendricks. Their partner, Ward Davis, one of the partners, Ward Davis, led the Village at Hendricks in Conway. They have a nice national network. Ward's on the board of the Form-Based Codes Institute and is the past president of the National Town Builders Association, but also have local experience and local relationships. And they're also kind of a one-stop shop for both the development management and the sales and marketing. So here is the capital stack in kind of rough numbers. So you can see total cost, infrastructure, and home building costs are projected to be right around $22 million. The majority of our funding sources are from bank debt, a little bit of investor equity. And we want to highlight a couple of things here. One, the $300,000 in grant funding. Certainly $300,000 in grant funding is not available to every project, but relative to the norm for affordable housing and the affordable housing industry, that's an extremely low level of subsidy. A typical low-income housing tax credit project, typically 60 to 70% of the total project costs are some form of subsidy, primarily the low-income housing tax credit. So compare 60 to 70% to 1.3%, and you can see that this is a really, is a fairly market-driven project. And then to repeat what we discussed earlier, the city of Fayetteville's $1 million contribution, that comes out the other side. You see the home buyer discount listed on the use of funds. And so it's really important to understand that $1 million is a straight pass-through for the project and ends up directly benefiting income qualified home buyers. From the project level, that $1 million represents what will be a reduction in our revenue from home sales. So, and even if you include the $1 million in the total subsidy amount, it amounts to 4.5% of total project costs. So this is really a market rate project with a $1 million fund that is available to provide home buyer discounts to income qualified home buyers. And with that, I will pass the mic to Tiffany Hudson. We are super excited to have Tiffany on board. She brings with her a ton of experience in home building and land development, and most recently worked at the Atlanta Housing Authority in Atlanta, helping to manage a large mixed income homeownership project, similar to Willow Bend, but much larger. So super excited to welcome Tiffany to Northwest Arkansas, and feel really fortunate that she's been able to join our team. So, Tiffany?
Thank you very much, Keaton. I am very excited to start building on these foundations that Partners for Better Housing has laid over these past years to begin the vertical construction on Willow Bend, as well as kick off our shared equity program, Pay It Forward. We did receive our final plat early this year, and we are hoping to begin our first phase of home building in the coming weeks. And we expect those homes to range in the starting prices from the low 200s to the low 300s. But what I'm going to talk about is our shared equity program, Pay It Forward. There we go. I thought I had a little technical difficulty, but we've got it now. So this shared equity program is, as Keaton has discussed, the infrastructure and cost sharing contribution from the city of Fayetteville. Partners developed this program to really serve as a financial tool that would maintain long-term affordability in the community. The homes that will be designated specifically for the lower income buyers will be evenly distributed throughout the neighborhood with no real discernible design differences. So you won't be able to identify as you're walking through Willow Bend which homes are specifically low income homes. And then we'll talk a little bit more about the deed restrictions later on, but it is essentially a legal document that will allow partners to recycle those home buyer discounts to subsequent buyers as resales occur over time. So our marketing process, our sales process, we expect to kind of divide the homes up into thirds. The first third of the homes, or approximately 27 homes, will be available to any market rate buyer who wants to live in this walkable community park-driven neighborhood. Then the second third of the homes will be reserved for teachers, first responders, nurses, any families who earn between 80 and 100% of the area median income. In this area for Fayetteville, that number is currently 69,900. So while it may take a little bit longer for those particular buyers to qualify for a loan, by reserving this middle bracket for those buyers, it protects their opportunity to purchase in the neighborhood and limits the competition that may be in the market from all cash buyers. So the final third of the homes are going to be reserved for our shared equity buyers. And those will be families that may have artists or service workers who earn less than 80% of the median family income in our area. The two charts at the bottom show with household size where that 80% mark is. And then the chart on the right shows your monthly payments that would be the maximum amount for which those households could qualify for a loan. And that will come into play in a later example when we show how we get those payments to where it could be affordable for people in this income bracket. So sorry about that. We're shifting again. So our Pay It Forward program, each buyer is eligible for a $35,000 homebuyer discount on their mortgage price. And with that discount comes a deed restriction, this legal document that caps the rate of the home value at 2%. We'll do a little bit deeper dive on that, but historically the homes in Fayetteville have appreciated at a rate of around 4%. So when the Pay It Forward buyer decides to sell their home, Partners for Better Housing has a right of first refusal to purchase the home at a slightly reduced rate from market and thereby recycle that discount to future buyers. So here is an example of how that would work, hopefully. Okay, so this shows that in the two columns, the purchase price and the total monthly payment of a home, an average home at $200,000 with and without the home buyer discount. And as you can see, just making some general assumptions about a 3.5% down payment and their rate and the 30-year term, recognizing all of that will change somewhat, the delta between that slightly more than $1,300 total monthly payment for the non-subsidized home versus the $1,100 payment for the home with the home buyer discount, that puts that particular home firmly within the ability to qualify for and afford that loan now for that home. So we have also tried to show how the subsidy grows over time. We have a couple of different examples of how that works. Starting in year one with the $35,000 subsidy, you can see that with time that grows. In year 7, it's up to $68,000 and all the way up through year 15. And then a different way, slightly different way to look at those numbers is this line chart that shows the starting point in year 1 of the $200,000 house versus the $165,000, and that difference between the market appreciation and the capped deed restriction appreciation really allows that gulf, allows those homes to remain affordable over the course of 20 years or even better. So the promise of any shared equity homeownership program is that not only the homes will remain affordable, but also that the buyers will build wealth. So in this particular example, in this resale scenario, you have that buyer with that initial purchase price of $165,000, holding their home for 7 years, which is average, with that resale cap of 2%, even after they've paid off their mortgage balance estimated at $142,000, that home buyer should walk away with very close to $40,000 in equity available to them for their next home purchase. So some of the other components of our program, of our Pay It Forward program, in addition to a full 2/3 of the home in the subdivision being reserved for those moderate income and lower income buyers, reducing the competition for them, we're also going to give preferences to long-term neighborhood residents. We will be working with the city of Fayetteville on income verification and some home buyer verification. And we will be working with CCOA, for example, on credit counseling. So what's in it for our buyers? For the Pay It Forward buyer, again, those homes are reserved if they may take longer to qualify. they will be earning, once they've closed on their home, they will be earning not only their equity from paying their monthly mortgage instead of rent, they will also be earning their home value appreciation up to 2% annually. And we anticipate that their total cost of homeownership should be lower due to their lower transportation costs and the energy efficiency and construction quality and longer term maintenance that they should not have with the new construction. Our moderate income buyer should anticipate all of those benefits, this high quality home in a great location, reserving it for those that are owner occupants, but will not have a cap on their resale value. And then finally, our market rate buyers, well, really all of our buyers will enjoy this sense of place, this master plan, architecturally significant neighborhood community in a trail accessible and park accessible location. So finally, how does the city of Fayetteville and its residents benefit from this $1 million investment that the city of Fayetteville put into this subdivision? Well, there's 80 homes, which is a gentle density, but it shows that density can be created in a beautiful and sustainable way. It's a very infrastructure efficient location, and that large amounts of additional infrastructure was not required to locate the community in that particular location. We do expect that the market will show the demand for the pent-up demand in this area for those smaller home types that we have designed and incorporated into our community. And then the lessons learned from the whole development process that Partners has gone through over this length of time. This will be the first shared equity homeownership program in our state. And we're hoping that this will be a proof of concept, that this will create a foundation for a regional affordability program. We would love to be able to create an additional pay it forward fund going forward that could be used in a variety of different ways. It could be that Partners would take on a whole nother development similar to Willow Bend and start from scratch. It could also be that Partners could partner with other builder developers in the area that would use the fund to provide discounts on those market rate homes they have already built and maintain longer term affordability and create some mixed income communities where they weren't maybe originally planned. But we've also considered something we call a scattered site program that's a little more home buyer driven. It would allow buyers to apply for the fund on individual resale homes they may be interested in, but which might not be quite attainable at their income level. So in summary, Keaton gave you a little context on the history of Partners and the history of our Willow Bend. Hopefully I've answered some of your questions about Pay It Forward and how that program will work, and some of our opportunities to replicate and scale this program on a regional basis. And that is all for us. We thank you for listening and would like to open up the call back to Wes and for any questions that may have popped up.
Thank you so much, Keaton and Tiffany. I think that's maybe the third time that I've heard about this presentation or one very similar, and about Willow Bend, and every time that I do, I learn something more that kind of blows my mind a little bit more about it. I just think it's remarkable what the team that you all assembled, the stakeholders you've identified. And I'm not talking about just your partners that have helped pull the project off, but the board members too. I think you've really aligned some of the smartest people in Northwest Arkansas around this common purpose. And I just applaud you for what you're getting done. I also really appreciate you, because I think that, you know, our role here at ULI is about broadening understanding on topics such as this and housing. And you all are definitely contributing. The work you're doing at Partners for Better Housing and the presentation here has definitely contributed to enhancing the shared understanding of this issue throughout Northwest Arkansas. I want to invite the audience to offer any questions that you might have, and feel free to send them to me. And I'll tell you what, tell you what I'll do for everybody. I will go ahead and allow you all to jump in to, if you all want to unmute yourself for to ask a question, you feel free to go ahead and do that. That'll save you the effort of going through on chat. And in the meantime, I have, here, so we have a question here, and I will pitch it to both, since it doesn't address either Tiffany or Keaton. I'll just throw it out here to both of you. Is there pushback from the development community about rear-loaded garages? And how do buyers, what is your sense, how buyers feel about rear-loading garages?
Well, I can attempt to take that. We're just getting into the home building process now, so you know, that's one of the things that we're testing. We'll have a couple carports in the neighborhood, but by and large, we will not be building garages. So that's one of the ways we're able to achieve a little bit more density in the neighborhood, and you know, we'll see how the market responds to that.
Great.
I can chime in and say that one of the projects that I worked on in Atlanta that was a mixed income, mixed use community did have some rear loaded garages, and it was sort of a love-hate relationship with the community. On the one hand, buyers loved having their homes closer to the street and the connectivity and interactiveness with their neighbors, and being able to sit on the front porch and socialize with people, and instead of having just a gaping garage at the front of their home. But on the other hand, it did present some security issues. So they did have a very active community group looking out for security issues. They were very cognizant of keeping those garage doors closed when they weren't in use, because they were on alleys. So it's a mixed bag, I think, from the homeowner and the home buyer perspective.
Great response. Appreciate you both. We'll see if anyone else, please, everyone, if you want to jump in, turn off your mute, or you're welcome to anonymously send to me via chat, and I'll relay your question. But I want to jump in here. So Partners for Better Housing is a C3, 501c3 nonprofit, and we recognize that the vast majority of housing that is going to be built here in Northwest Arkansas, and in fact throughout the country, is for-profit developers. What role, and so knowing that, even based on what we've learned in the first two events of this series, in particular from Mervyn Jebaraj's assessment of market trends during our first event, we recognize that we have some supply and demand challenges happening here. What share of that supply do you see going to nonprofit, recognizing that most is going to go to the for-profit developer? What share do you see nonprofit playing in providing an attainable housing supply, and what do you see as the unique, what are the benefits of additional agencies like Partner for Better Housing getting into the attainability and get into the attainability market?
Yeah, you know, I would, it's tough to put a number on it percentage-wise, but I think you're exactly right that the vast majority of housing will be delivered by for-profit developers. And so as we're thinking about our opportunity to make an impact, it's not so much that we're going to solve a housing problem by by building all the housing. It's that through our development projects, we can take a little bit more risk and maybe hit on some models that allow more units per acre, or narrower streets, or design differences that allow for more units and more supply to be built. And then secondly, through our programs, we would love to partner with the for-profit development community. If a home builder may be building a 100-unit neighborhood in Northwest Arkansas, we hope to be able to replicate this pay-it-forward model. And so maybe that builder wants to set aside 10 or 20 homes to enter into the pay-it-forward program, incorporate, mixed income accessibility into the neighborhood, and then Partners for Better Housing. Our role would be to, one, secure the funding to make sure the builder is whole and gets the market rate price for their product, but then to work with those buyers to help them get qualified for a mortgage, and then continue to work with them. We'll have a very long-term relationship with our buyers to provide ongoing support, homeownership 101, maintenance training, financial planning, estate planning sort of services. So it's to make sure that this promise of wealth building that is so core to the American dream, so core to home ownership, the promise of home ownership, is realized by the pay-it-forward buyers.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Keaton. Another question coming in from an audience member. Back on the garages, are there opportunities to convert some of the garages to ADUs, to accessory dwelling units in the future? Maybe to further enhance the density that is happening there in Willow Bend, or simply make better use of an underutilized garage space, or a revenue stream potentially for that landowner. Do you all have the flexibility? I guess what we're asking here, Tiffany and Keaton, is their flexibility in Willow Bend, maybe by covenants and restrictions or anything else that you see that would prevent the use of increasing density through the use of ADUs in the future, garage conversion to ADUs?
I think the design of the community, given that most of the homes will not have garages, and will not, it's such a tight community, it's already a very dense community as it's designed, that there's not capacity to add garages, and certainly not capacity to add ADU units or convert those garages. That being said, some of the cottage court work that will be done in there and in some adjacent cottage court communities around the area, I think will speak a little bit better to the ADU needs and requirements within the city of Fayetteville.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, we definitely see a lot of promise with ADUs. It's just that we've already put housing everywhere we can in this neighborhood, for the most part. So, yeah, I think that project that the CDC of Bentonville is working on to build a few ADU prototypes is really interesting. And this idea that perhaps ADUs could be sort of pre-permitted, and the process for ADU permits and the construction documents, that could be a very streamlined process for homeowners. We're absolutely interested from a regional perspective in thinking through how to accelerate ADU adoption, whether that's a garage conversion or a backyard cottage. We definitely see that as a great example of gentle density.
Outstanding, thank you. Final question on parking. Did you all have to meet city parking requirements, or were there entitlement concessions made as far as the amount of available surface parking for your residents?
Yeah, we were held to all the same city of Fayetteville requirements that everyone else is. That was really important to the city that, you know, because they were contributing financially to the project, that they wanted to make sure that we were held to all of those same restrictions. But so the parking situation, there's shared parking courts, and parking. There are on-site parking areas, and then there will be some on-street opportunities as well.
Super. You mentioned deed restrictions in your presentation. Are there any deed restrictions or covenants that exist as far as turning any of these owner-occupied residences into rental spaces for the market?
So the deed restriction, the restrictive covenant document, that is what gives Partners for Better Housing the right of first refusal to repurchase the home, and it also sets the annual appreciation cap. The POA documents are what require the owner occupancy.
Okay, so there are an owner occupant that's in the Pay It Forward program, or any owner, even the market rate owner occupants, they are not permitted to rent those housing units. Is that accurate?
We are trying to be flexible, given that we know some of our audience may be teachers or professors, and have some leeway in that, where if a teacher wants to take a sabbatical for 3 months or and rent out their home, we allow that. And also certainly allow roommates if the owner is also living there as well. But the idea is to encourage owner occupancy in the neighborhood. Yeah. So there's limits to legally how much we can require over the course of multi generations of the market rate sales, but the initial sales and the Pay It Forward deed restricted sales, we have a little bit more control with those POA documents of requesting owner occupancy.
Super. Thank you for answering that question. May have time for one or two more. I've got one here from the design community, it looks like. What opportunities exist for people from the design community, architects in particular, to get involved with the work that's ongoing at Willow Bend? Have you all already established your design guild? Are they locked in, or is there still opportunities for people to reach out to you and inquire about bids and quotes?
Yeah, we'd love to chat with anyone in terms of the architecture for the Willow Bend neighborhood specifically. That is the 13 home plans that we have are pretty well finalized, and Robert Sharp is the volunteer town architect. But I mean, if folks are excited about the work, we'd love to chat.
And where can they find that information? Do you all have a website or social media presence?
We're primarily on Facebook, and then www.partnersforbetterhousing.org. And then you can find Tiffany and I on Facebook, LinkedIn.
Super. Thank you very much, Keaton. Thank you very much, Tiffany. Again, I love the model that you all have created here. I think there are so many lessons to be learned. Recognizing that the majority of housing that's going to come into Northwest Arkansas will come from the private sector. I think you all have the opportunity to have somewhat of a laboratory here, and you can test out new things. You're testing out narrower streets and your higher density, different typologies of home, definitely a unique capital stack with the Pay It Forward program. I actually think there's a way to turn the Pay It Forward program into a private equity, more like a real estate investment trust, where maybe you can see private equity partners come in to better support the attainability of middle income buyers and really excellent projects. And one thing I love the most about it is you really honor total housing costs. All too often we get fixated on per square foot or sales price, when actuality we have to fold in all of the costs, and you acknowledge maintenance and energy costs and transportation, and you've attempted to keep a tip of the hat in Willow Bend to all of those things, such that when those residents move in, they can have a predictable, stable total housing costs for that period of time. So once again, remarkable project. Thank you for making time to inform the ULI Northwest Arkansas audience on Willow Bend. And to my audience members, as always, we couldn't do it without you. Thank you so much for making time to join us this morning. We hope to see you back next Wednesday. We will host a roundtable discussion. It will be a panel of key regional leaders, and we will continue to discuss the topic of attainability here in Northwest Arkansas. That roundtable will include, we have 3 different developers, Taylor Marquess, Bill Burkhart, and Cope Gracie. We also have the president of the Northwest Arkansas Board of Realtors, that's Don McNaughton, and we have a government policy representative, Garner Stoll, who's the current director of development services for the city of Fayetteville. Same time, same channel, next Wednesday, 10 a.m. It's our final episode in the series, and we definitely encourage you to drop by arkansas.uli.org to register. Again, it's for free, and you can find a lot of other information there about membership, other events that we're hosting in the area, and you can learn about ways to get involved with ULI. Find us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. You can also find my contact information all over any of these 4 channels. If you need anything, feel free to reach out to me at any time. Once again, to everybody, thank you very much, and we hope to see you next Wednesday. Take care.